I want to talk about how Canada has long portrayed itself as a peacekeeping nation. But I want to know, do you think that this facade has faded? We know in many of our supply chains, we have fast fashion like Shein, and religious minorities like the Uyghurs who are under forced labor practices, and we're buying tomatoes from them. The EU has taken some action around this by taxing and investigating these practices. And more recently, China's not the only country. Canada also sold armored vehicles to ICE. So I want to know, how can we as Canadians claim ethical leadership while trading with countries tied to human rights abuses?
Hmm. Anybody in particular you want on this?
Anybody, go for it.
Lynette.
Lynette, go ahead.
We'll start with, I don't think any country should stand on moral high ground and say that we only do fair trade, because these things are very, very murky. The lines are very murky. Right? The examples that you have given, you have to really have to break down the ingredients of a shirt, of a blouse, to say that where these ingredients are actually sourced from. It is very, very difficult. But on the questions of vulnerability, as you have mentioned and we discussed earlier, I think Canada, by definition, because of the size of the Chinese diaspora, which I'm one of them, I'm also a Chinese Canadian, is vulnerable to Chinese political interference, whether or not we trade with China. I mean, these are two separate questions. Why are we inflating them? Why are we conflating them, right? And if we do not trade with China, there's another question that we have not asked. How about our economic prosperity? Are we trading off certain things for not trading with China? I think we tend to conflate values with interests, and then economic interest and political interest. Maybe we should think about, separating them.
Constantine.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that point more. It was an excellent point of conflating things that don't really come together. Bad stuff could happen regardless of whether we're trading with anybody or not. But, when it comes to trading with countries that share our values, I'll plagiarize and I'll quote John Ibbotson in the Globe, who said, if we only traded with countries that saw the world the way we see it, we'd be left with maybe Holland and maybe Denmark, and that's it. If we wouldn't trade with anybody.
And how boring that would be.
It wouldn't be terribly profitable. But so I think we need to compartmentalize trading and protecting the country and the national interest and the rule of law. So trading, as the Prime Minister said, the old way of doing things is dead. I mean, we need to do things differently. And in order to do things differently, we need to take many different approaches and start trading with
Again,
nobody's saying that we shouldn't trade with China. Again, it depends on what kind of trade. And it's not just about trade. It's also about investment. It's about deeper economic relations. Trade right now is not just about trade. There are links to national security and economic security. And Lynette is right that our vulnerability vis-a-vis foreign interference and diaspora is, of course, baked in, given the composition of Canadian society. But we also have other potential vulnerabilities if we become strategically dependent on China in certain sectors. So you can still become more vulnerable. Just because a certain level of vulnerability is baked in doesn't mean that, oh, well, then in that case, it doesn't matter what else we do. So I think, again, multiple things can be true at the same time. Yes, we have to do some trade with China. China is an important, consequential economic power we cannot ignore. And we have to be clear-eyed about the kind of strategic dependencies, the kind of risks that come with greater engagement, given that trade now is intrinsically linked to national security and economic security. We're not living in a world where politics, trade, diplomacy are separate lanes.